Chrissy. Happy podcast day.
Hi, Kristen. How are you?
I'm super. I got out of the house like on trips.
I know that was a much needed break for you after taking care of me.
Yeah. For our listeners who didn't listen to the last episode, Chris had some major surgery. And so the entire month of July was nothing scheduled, just recuperating from surgery. And what are you, like 5 weeks out now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And I decided I'd had enough of you healing and I needed some shit done around the house. So today I was like, okay, I think you're healed. You're done. Now you can hobble over and hang my beautiful dry erase board that I needed hung, and you did it.
Yeah, and that was great. You had me standing up on step stools, so my knee is about the size of a grapefruit right now, but I'm just happy that I was able to help you.
I don't want to hear the whining. Listen, it's been almost 6 weeks of capitulating to your injury.
5.5. Thursday will be 6 weeks, so I still got a little bit of time.
Yeah. Well, we did manage to go to Chicago at the 4-week mark, which I'm convinced was not a good idea in hindsight.
You know, actually, it was a little tough, but I wouldn't have missed it because obviously our son was throwing out the first pitch at a Cubs game and there's no way I was going to miss that. But
that is a sentence you don't say very often. That's true.
Which is exactly why I wasn't going to miss it. But it was a very hard thing to accept that I had to take a wheelchair in the airport.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. I videotaped all of it to shame you.
I was going to say all the Snapchats you sent showing that was was very humbling for me. I've never had to do that before, so that was difficult. Mm-hmm. And not being able to do as much as I want to do is the frustrating part. Like I know you're getting frustrated. I know you're glad you got to get out of the house, but I honestly, I think I told you last week that I think I'm hitting a little bit of a depression. Like I'm stuck here in the house. I can't do any of the things I want to do. And I'm just starting to, in your words, tick.
Yeah. I know. See, now you know that feeling. Yeah. And it's only going to get easier from here on. I mean, you're already moving around so much better, but yeah, that trip was a little difficult because, as you said, we would never have missed that. But I was like in this moment because so many people were at the Cubs game to watch Jake and they were scattered all over Wrigley Field. And so I kept like looking at you like, come on, let's go. And you couldn't go. Like your doctor said, you may only have 1,000 steps per day. And we had already hit that number before we even got to Wrigley Field. And so I'm just so used to you coming with me, like, let's go. And as I was running around, so that was difficult for both of us, but we got through it.
It was hard because I had to miss all of that. So I missed seeing all the people that we've known forever because they were so scattered and you couldn't get down to our section because you had to have tickets to get down there. Mm-hmm. So it was just that part was a real bummer for me. I wish I would have gotten to see everybody.
Okay. So the only good part is that you weren't with me when I was able to talk my way onto the field where Jake was throwing the first pitch because, like those sections, they're pretty well secured and you can't get down there, to that lower level. So I saw a woman security guard and she looked like the age where she could be a mother, And so I like zeroed in on her and I said, excuse me, my son is right there and he's throwing out the first pitch today. I said, can I just go down to get some pictures and, take video and then I will return to my peasant seat. And she like looked around and she's like, yes, come right in. And so, like I wouldn't have had that moment, I think, if anybody else had been with me, because I don't think she could have let two people down. So that was pretty cool.
No, which was great because I was glad that you got to get down there to see him. But honestly, we got better videos
you got
and pictures than you did because we were up high enough where we could see him and zoom in on him. So I was not upset about not getting down
what was
there.
Cool. Here's what was cool, though. You guys got better videos and of him on the Jumbotron, but Bailey was our only child that was not present that day. All the other kids were there because she's in the Air Force and she was actually training in Hawaii. And
rough life.
Yeah. And she she FaceTimed me. And so she was able to see him throw out the first pitch. And that made me so happy. And so that was really cool. So she was so sad that she had to miss it. So that was a way of having her front.
Yeah.
front
And that's
center.
good because it was great because all the other kids were there. Our grandson was there. He had his very first Cubs game. So it was like it was just nice to be back there. And it definitely solidified that. I know I push back on you all the time, but I do want to be in Chicago more. I miss the kids. I just don't miss them in the cold weather.
Yeah, me either. Yes, I only miss them when it's warm in Chicago. Yeah. That's happening. Well, welcome to the Disruptors Creed podcast. I'm Kristen Ziman, and once again, I am shocked you are here. Today, we are talking about a story that was inspired by our friend Sylvia, who is actually the co-host of the other podcast that I'm on. And she told this story. She was out of the country, and she said she had ziplined for the first time. And she was talking about how scared she was at the beginning, like heart palpitating. And then she said, and then I did it. And she said, and I did it because I think I just forgot to be afraid. And I said, whoa. That is so profound what you just said. And so that sparked actually part of a chapter in the new book I'm writing called Do It Scared, but it's about forgetting to be afraid. And I wanted to unpack that. So this week I wrote a blog post about it, which is also an excerpt that is in my book. But I thought that would be a good thing for you and I to hash out today, the theme of fear, courage, and the moment that we're afraid, but we do the thing anyway.
Yeah, I think that for us, that's and I think part of the reason why Sil had the same feelings is the line of work that we have because of the things that we've done for so long. You just aren't afraid. It's like after the moment's over, whether we're running into a burning building or chasing someone with a gun or, in just a crazy chaotic situation, we just tap into what we know. We do our jobs. I can remember so many times I did something at work and it wasn't until I got back in my squad car sitting by myself where I went, oh, that was the dumbest thing I've ever done. Like, I'm glad I didn't get myself killed because I just forgot to be afraid in the moment and tapped into what I knew, what I had trained for, and did the job that I was supposed to do.
Yeah. You're kind of, isolating it to law enforcement, but the concept is the same. So there's a difference there between, reckless abandonment of, screw it, I'm just going to jump and, everything else be damned, jumping without that net, right? It's not that. It's not like the Leroy Jenkins of just running through the door, and not worrying about the consequences. That the reason that you were able to do the thing that you did in our line of work is because you built the competency. You went to the academy and you had the training that was drilled into you. And that's actually one of the stories that I tell in my book, is that it was one of my first few weeks on the job. And I had just gotten back from the academy and I was riding with my field training officer, who was actually a stand-in training officer that day, and a shots fired came through and we were right around the corner, heard them. And next thing you know, I throw the car in park, we jump out of the car and we're jumping over fences. I remember seeing the muzzle flash from the gun. That's how close we were to these shooters. And we chased after him and we both tackled him, got him into handcuffs. And I didn't think, and it reminded me of Sylvia, is I forgot to be afraid. But as I was connecting the dots backwards and thinking, okay, well, I forgot to be afraid because I was going on muscle memory. I had built the confidence over those 4 months in the academy and the in-house training that I did what I was trained to do. And I think the premise here is not that. I don't want to lose people. No one can relate hardly, except for first responders who running through the backyards after someone with a gun. It's bigger than that. It's building the competency, the reps, and that's what builds the confidence, which is what builds this idea of being able to do the thing, either forgetting to be afraid or doing it scared.
So don't you think that what it also reminds me of is you go around and you speak all over the world. And in conversations with people after your talks, or everybody will come up to me to, talk about what you just did and they say, I couldn't imagine doing that. I would be terrified getting up on stage. Public speaking is such a terrifying thing for the majority of people. And then I look at you and you're not afraid. And it's because, but I can remember in the beginning when you were.
Well,
and then you built the confidence, and you're confident, and you made sure you knew your material, and you studied, and you did everything to prepare for this moment. And when you walk on stage, you are ready to go, and you forget to be scared. Even though there's 1,000 people, you forget to be scared, and you walk out and you are in the zone and you go. And it's just, people are in awe of it.
Well, think about that. And we can use that as a great example, because I would love to take the compliment that I hear, gosh, you're such a good speaker. I could never do that. I could never public speak. And people ask me, how did you learn to do that? And here's the interesting part, is what they're seeing is present day, this era of my speaking. But let's really unpack this. This goes back to the early 90s when I was a young cop and I was assigned to the community-oriented policing unit. And my sergeant said, get in there and you need to go talk to that neighborhood group because they're pissed off. This was 90s high crime. So this wasn't a welcoming, friendly crowd. These were like shaking their fists of, what are you going to do about it? And I remember my voice shaking. I remember my hands shaking, and I had to hold them so people couldn't see that I was terrified to talk in front of people. And then I kept doing it, and the muscle got built. And then I got promoted to sergeant, and I had to go stand in front of police officers at every roll call and, lead them through training. And there were some sergeants that didn't want to do that. So we would trade our assignments. I'd be like, you work on the schedule and I'll go do your roll call day, because I got more comfortable. Then I got promoted to lieutenant and then commander, and I got asked to speak at conferences. And then I became the chief, where literally it was my job to be in front of people with microphones. So what you see today has been a series of absolutely terrifying things that I had to do while I was scared. But then I built up that repetition and that confidence that has led to competency. So I think we're talking a little more about the beginnings. And I think that's what I really want to hone in to, a quote by Seth Godin that I talk about a lot. And this is where I think this is where it happens. Picture yourself about to embark upon anything. I mean, anything, you name it, something that you've never done before, something that you're afraid to do because you might fail. And Seth Godin says this: when you are sitting right on the edge of something daring and scary and creative and powerful and perhaps wonderful, and you blink and you take a step back, that is the moment between you and remarkable. Most people blink. Most people get stuck. So all the hard work and preparation and daring and luck is nothing compared with the ability not to blink. That's where I want to really unpack this, because this is what we do as humans. We blink and we take a step back.
I think that when you talk about that, it reminds me of earlier conversations that we've had about self-confidence. And I'm not talking about cocky, because there's a huge difference between being cocky and confident. And it's the confidence, having a solid foundation, whether it's your friend group, your family, your spouse, whatever it is, knowing that when you take that leap, if you fail, someone's going to be there to catch you. And if you don't have a person to do it, you are secure enough in yourself to go, I failed, but I learned. So I'm going to learn from every failure, and I'm going to get better. And I think that it goes back to that. When you take a step back and you blink, you let that fear get you. And because you're afraid of failure, or because you're afraid nobody's going to be there to pick you up, or because you're afraid of being laughed at. But when you have that confidence in yourself, and you have, you can take that step, you don't blink and you go. Right. And there's your remarkable.
And, I think it's important what you just said there, is that people are afraid of failure. They're afraid of ridicule. They're afraid of judgment. And what I also found funny and talk about this quite a bit, is that we're not afraid to fail when we're by ourselves. We'll do all kinds of stupid things by ourselves and, trip over ourselves, sing in the shower, what have you. But the minute someone looks at us, that's when we actually become afraid of judgment, and we're afraid of putting ourselves out there, from posting the video or writing the book or starting the business, or what have you. And what I find interesting is that idea of failing, is that we learn from failure that I think the most important thing that we can learn in life, and that is simply this: you didn't die. Someone probably helped you through it. Hopefully you didn't die, but well, if you did, then you would have a counter argument. And that's where I think we talk about the recklessness, as failing forward. But, we got through it, right? Think about all of the times that you tried something and sucked at it, and then you kept getting better at it. Once again, we're talking about overcoming fear. We're always scared to do a new thing because we're not going to be good at it in the beginning. We may even fail. And it's that act of failure that builds confidence to say, all right, I made it through, and here is the lesson that I needed to learn from that, and I can go forward. And I can remember our friend Carrie telling me this. She was a cop with us, and she left the job after 10 years, and she did the unthinkable, right?
Yes. Terrifying.
She had wanted to be a cop just like I did since she was young. And she finally got there. And after 10 years, she said, this wasn't what I wanted. This wasn't for me. It triggered her. And there were just so many things that it stirred up in her. And she realized, this is not the profession I want. And I remember telling her, this was the advice I gave her back then. I said, don't jump without a net. Don't do it. And she did anyway. And she said this to me. She said, because it seems like every time I jump, a net appears. No matter what, I have learned that I just need to do it scared, because the net or the bridge or whatever metaphor you want to use will always appear. She's not going to die. She's going to figure it out every single time. And that has always stayed with me. And that's where I think that do it scared comes from, is that you build up the reps and the confidence to know no matter what, even in uncertainty, you're going to be okay. And that's really powerful stuff.
I can remember having the same conversations with her. And I think that that's part of it too, is that she was self-assured because she had done the work. She knew what she wanted, she knew where she was, and she knew where she wanted to go. And she saw the path to where she wanted to be. Mm-hmm. And she was sure she could do it. And she also knew that if there was a struggle, she did have people to fall back on. She had us. She had a place where she could always lay her head. Whatever she needed, we would always be there for her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And I think there's something to that. And I think that most people get frozen with fear because of the uncertainty, because they can't see the path forward. And that's where you have to trust in your instincts when you know that it's time to make that step. And I think there's the key as well, is it's action. It's taking that first step, because all fear is innate. It's our default to freeze, to hesitate. It's the things that keep us from danger, the fight, flight, or freeze. And that's what fear is, because it's innate in us. That's where I think that blink comes from, that Seth Godin talks about. There is a moment, and all that moment it's the voice inside your head. That's it. It's that little asshole that lives between your two ears, because that voice inside your head, it knows your weaknesses, it knows your vulnerabilities, and it talks you out of things. That's the blinking part. And it's your job to overcome that moment where you're about to talk yourself out of doing the thing, because all of the what ifs will come through. What if I fail? What if people laugh at me? What if I'm judged? And it's overcoming that moment. It's becoming a disruptor inside your own head to get through that fear and to do the thing. You're not going to die.
Yeah, I think it's right. It's much like that little voice is always there. And then you're in a place where you're so uncomfortable, change has to happen. Mm-hmm. You're not sitting in your comfort anymore. Whether you're not happy in a relationship or a job or whatever it is, that you can no longer sit stagnant and you're ready to break free of whatever situation, an addiction, name it, whatever it is that you've gotten yourself stuck into, that now you're so unhappy that the only way out is change. And that's the moment where you don't blink, because you have had enough and you take that step.
Mm-hmm. I think that blink also is even bigger now that I actually think about it. I think that so many of us, and myself included for a long time, and this is why I gave Carrie the advice I gave her, is that the trap that we fall into is the waiting to feel ready. Like as soon as I feel ready, then I'll do the thing. And you're never going to be ready. You're just never going to be ready if you're waiting for that moment of inspiration, that moment of motivation, that readiness. It's not going to come. And I think that's what people get backwards, is like they believe confidence is built by becoming ready to, just I'm going to plan and try to be ready before I do the thing, when actually it's the inverse is the formula, is that we become more confident the more that we move, instead of waiting to feel ready. We do the thing, maybe we fall down, fall short, pick ourselves back up, and then we get better at it. And that's what builds the confidence. But all of us, I would say at some point in our lives, have fallen into I have to make sure I'm ready before I do that. And sometimes that's not going to serve you. It's going to keep you stagnant.
It reminds me of when you were going to put in for a commander. You had two master's degrees. You took every training class. You did all these things, getting ready to check every box to put in for this job. And then all these other guys who didn't have even a quarter of your experience were like, well, I'm putting in for it. You wanted to do everything to get ready. And then you got in the job, and that's when you were ready, because you learned it. You got in there and you didn't know everything, but you were open enough to learn and to know what you didn't know.
That's the trap that I always have to get out of for myself. And you mentioned it perfectly, is like, I always think I have to check all the boxes before I do X, Y, and Z. I have to, make sure that I go through my checklist and that I'm qualified and then overqualified when, but actually that's kind of my imposter syndrome though. And it actually serves me well, because I think it motivates me to be more ambitious, because I never feel like I deserve it. And so I always want to make sure that I'm proving it. So yeah, that's kind of it's like I wasn't afraid of putting in for it. In fact, I think I've always been a little more fearless of like, I'm just going to do that. But on the contrary, it's because I have tried to build the checklist of being ready. But the science in the research show that fear, which is the amygdala's response, and the only way to overcome that response is action. And so that action, when we are stuck in that blink or in that moment, when we are on the cusp of doing something amazing or, and scary, action is the only way to override that. And I think it's the incremental changes are the things that lead to monumental movements, right? And so it's the small steps. And I think that's also why people get stuck, is because they think, wow, look at this giant mountain in front of me that I have to climb. When, man, you take one step, you take 15 steps, and pretty soon you're halfway up the mountain and you don't even realize it.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. Like, it's people look at the goal and they want to run to the end, but you have to start, you got to start with that first step. That's the only way you're going to get to where you're going to be, and you have to go through it. So it's learning to manage your fear and just, take a big deep breath and jump.
Yeah. So we know that courage isn't innate. It's absolutely conditioned. And I think that's good news. It's like confidence. You're not born confident. You're not born courageous. You become that through reps, through practice, through preparation. Every single time you override fear, you become more fearless, right? Or you're scared and you come to a point in time where you trust yourself to say, I am so scared, but I'm going to do this scared.
Yeah. And you can give that to yourself, because building courage, building confidence, it's the promises you keep to yourself. It's not about anybody around you, what they say, if they give you props, if they try to tear you down. It's saying, tomorrow I'm going to do this, and then you do it. And every day you make a promise to yourself and you keep that promise. And every time you keep that promise, you build the confidence and you build the security within yourself to keep moving forward.
Speaking of fears, you have a fear of closed spaces of elevators. So will this apply there where you're just like, do it scared, or are you
Have I
still
not gotten better?
You've gotten better, yeah, but you're not to the point where you're not going to walk up 13 flights of stairs and get into the elevator.
Right now, I don't have a choice because
that's right. You can't.
I can't.
Yeah,
but
you have to.
I mean, there have been elevators. I've done 22 flights of stairs because I would not get into it.
I know.
But I have gotten better. As long as you're in there with me, I am better because
So we've been doing exposure therapy. That's what that is, right?
And I'm learning to breathe through it, and I'm not feeling as anxious. And I'm even getting better, like on airplanes. I remember when I got locked in the bathroom on the airplane and I almost had a panic attack.
I was oblivious to the whole thing. You're like, I just got trapped.
You didn't wonder why I was gone for so long? I've never been in a bathroom that long.
I don't know, man. I'm immersed in what I'm doing, but you're like, I just got trapped in the bathroom. But exposure therapy, I think I should just lock you in a trunk or something.
No,
don't you think you'll get over it then?
No, because actually the other night, I don't know what we were watching on TV, but when I laid down to go to sleep, we've been talking about getting scuba certified with our daughter and our son-in-law. And so I laid down to go to sleep, and I had this vision of us scuba diving, and I was swimming into a wreck, and the wreck started sinking, and I was trapped, and I legitimately could not sleep. had a panic attack laying in our bed, and I had to open my eyes. I could not lay there with the blankets on me or my eyes closed because I was losing it over being trapped. So I am getting better, but I still do have my moments. So I'm going to say no to a trunk.
Okay. All right now. So no. Yeah. Maybe that's not the kind of fear that we're talking about.
Because it's not even the same thing. It's just not. It's something that I can't, if I could help it, and I'm learning how to do breathing exercises. I'm learning how to just relax and take control of my insides. So I'm learning, but there are times that it hits so hard and I can't do anything about it right then. I just need maybe you're
onto something though, because it doesn't matter what kind of fear you're faced with, right? Is that what you just said is that physical exercise that you go through is, slowing down your heart rate, the deep breaths, recognizing the fear and do it anyway. So it's kind of the same thing. So that's the call to action to you listeners, to all of the disruptors. Identify something in your life that you have been putting off because of fear. And I want to challenge you to take one small step towards that thing this week. Do it scared. Forget to be afraid just for a blink, because that is where the disruption happens.
And don't be afraid to say it. We have a friend who has a lot of anxiety about some things. And he told me when the last time we were together, and he's like, I just get so in my head and I get so anxious sometimes. And sometimes I say it out loud, knock it off. And I'm like, he disrupts his own thought process. And I looked at him and went, oh my God, I do the same thing. Sometimes I get so in my head, whether it's the small space or I start spiraling on something else. And I will literally say to myself out loud, knock it off.
Yeah.
And I have to disrupt my own thought process.
Yeah.
And then I can be like, okay, done with that thought for now.
Yeah, that blink, that's it. That whatever you choose to do in that moment, that blink is a split second when discomfort collides with the decision to act. So don't waste it. Don't waste it. You just have to move. So that's the lesson here, disruptors. Keep on disrupting, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for having me back.
Anytime, intern Chris. And that's a wrap on this week's episode of the Disruptors Creed, where we don't do average, and we sure as hell don't do status quo. It's produced by me, Kristen Ziman, because I like to be in control of everything. Musical score is by Ethan Reardon and Jake Ziman, because talent runs deep in this gene pool. If you like what you heard, do that thing. Click subscribe, like, follow, or whatever button keeps this chaos flowing into your ears. And if you didn't like it, you probably need it more than you think. Head over to KristenZiman.com and sign up for my weekly brain droppings, where I dump thoughts, disrupt your thinking, and hopefully light a fire under your ass, all conveniently delivered to your inbox every Monday. You're welcome. Now go out there and cause some good trouble. Until next time, keep on disrupting, my fellow disruptors. Onward and upward.